song sailing on the wind, her wings flashing in the sun.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Mike McMahon and I'm the Executive Director of the Hymn Society in the United States and Canada. In 2017, I first encountered Andrew Donaldson at a hymn festival where I saw him up front with his guitar leading a song, and I was just so impressed with what I experienced at that hymn festival. And it just struck me when I was reading the bio that he submitted to us in preparation for this interview that the very first thing that he listed on his resume is song leader, and so he is. He's a song leader, composer, text writer. He's a denominational and ecumenical church leader, an editor, a compiler of congregational song, and he also has served as past president of the Hymn Society. And in 2021, he was named a fellow of the Hymn Society. So he's got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with us today, and I'm just so pleased to have this conversation. Andrew, welcome. It's good to be with you.
It's wonderful to be here, Mike. Glad to be here.
So, given all of the things that you've done, I'd love to reach back ahead of all that and sort of start at the beginning and hear a little bit about your background. I know you were born in Northern Ontario of missionary parents. I wonder a little bit about how you got attracted yourself to being involved in the church and in the music of the church.
Yes, so my mom and dad worked kind of building leadership. Their early model was kind of a St. Paul model of moving around from church to church. And I lived in, I guess, 3 towns. And then finally, so I kind of stayed put. But in 57, 58, they established a summer camp, which is still continuing today, called Northland Bible Camp. And in it, I did many things besides, I led hikes and canoeing and so on. But daily chapel and Bible study was part of the curriculum. And it was there that I first, actually before that, way back when I was a wee child, I remembered a song we sang that had the striking image, mid rending rocks and darkening skies, which I looked up and it's still being used in places. And that phrase, the lyrical phrase, stuck with me. And I kind of brought that in a way to my being at camp. And I remember particularly I must have been maybe 16 at camp. And I don't know why they asked me to lead a song, but there I was standing in front of this heavy birch pulpit. And I was swinging my arms with a lot of enthusiasm and not a lot of expertise. And I whacked the pulpit and I broke the top off. And with it, there was that feeling that has kind of marked my work, the feeling of what I'll call gotta be there. And I was just felt as if I was in some way, I didn't articulate it in any detailed way, but I thought, this is something wonderful. And they repaired the pulpit, of course, and we went on. But, and my family was a music-making family. We made music at church and at home and at sort of informal situations, singing in the backyard and that kind of thing. And I fell in love with the drums in grade 7, I guess, and weaseled my way into the high school band a year earlier than I should have. Well, according to the way you're supposed to do it. And then in middle high school, I switched to guitar because I was looking for harmony. And we played. I played the bass in there at some point, and so we sang as a family, in that. And of course, in that period, congregational song in the larger sense was everywhere. Protest songs and people singing at folk festivals and so on. And it was music that was not designed for virtuoso voices so much as it was for kind of people to sing along. So
that's interesting to me that, here in the United States, it's not a very singing culture, but it sounds like you grew up in a world where singing was pretty integral to life.
Yeah. And I mean that, I'm sort of drawing perhaps a narrow frame around my experience, but yeah, we were involved in singing wherever it happened, and we absorbed it from wherever it was happening. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
And and did you get involved in leadership of congregational song in church?
I did. Yeah, I'm laughing because sometimes I would conduct a song in our chapel in South Porcupine and try to elicit nuances and louds and softs and probably not what people were expecting. But yes, I did song leading and gradually developed some modicum of technique. Yeah, so I did, and
Uh-huh.
leading with the guitar and so on.
So you did knock over more pulpits after
No,
you,
the pulpits were after that point kind of safe from my my enthusiasm.
yeah, and the guitar then became sort of really important in your overall trajectory, right? Because you went on and studied guitar at
Yeah,
conservatory level.
yeah. I the I st there wasn't anybody really teaching guitar in Northern Ontario. Um, my mom taught piano and taught us piano, and we picked up whatever guitar we could from anybody who would teach us. But well, I was a little tiny anecdote. I was actually trying to work out some chords on the piano at camp one time, and this young woman who was studying violin at the Royal Conservatory came and was just watching me. This is at camp, and she said, "You're a frustrated musician." And she knew that I was that fall going to Toronto to go to university. And she said, "You got to study with the best." And she gave me a name of a studio that was then quite famous in Toronto. And in that fall, they were offering kind of a 6-week guitar special. And so I scraped money together and started studying at the Ellie Kastner Guitar Academy. And that's when so I was 19 or something. And I mean, I had quite a bit of guitar experience behind me, but then the sound of the classical guitar really appealed to me. And so that I continued until getting my A.R.C.T, the Associate of the Royal Conservatory Teachers in 79.
And I know you went on to become a music director in churches. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, so here's another little story. So, um, Wendy and I were married in 74, and found the local Presbyterian church, which was kind of between my Brethren, Plymouth Brethren background and her United Church background, and was local. And we started attending that church. And then I'm going to say 82 or 3, the minister left, and I'm shortening the story a bit, but the choir asked me if I would be the choir conductor because the minister took his wife with him, and she had been playing the organ.
Uh,
And so I started conducting the choir, and and for one year I was trying to find fill-in organists because I wasn't really great at conducting with the organ. And through a contact of Wendy's, a young man who was studying his PhD, and his wife was one of Wendy's colleagues, an itinerant music teacher, and she said, the wife said to Wendy, Elizabeth, her name is, she said, "Now my husband is delivering newspapers while he works on his PhD in musicology, and maybe he could come and maybe fill in a bit." So Don Anderson, who is now still a member of the Hymn Society, came to listen to us, and from then on, he and I were colleagues at Beaches Presbyterian Church, him accompanying and me being the music director.
wow. And you made a lot of contributions to the Presbyterian Church in Canada. I mean, you went on to become editor of the hymnal developed by the Presbyterian Church in Canada.
Yeah, yeah. What happened there was I was invited first of all to be on the committee that was on, and so I joined that committee on a volunteer basis, and we worked on that, and that kind of led indirectly to learning that the Book of revision of the Presbyterian Book of Praise was coming along. And so between us all, we figured out that it was too big a job for one person, we thought. And Don Anderson had all of the project management and computer skills. And I had this background in teaching congregational singing and teaching students to play instruments. And so we applied as a team,
Hmm.
Don Anderson being full-time and I being half-time. And so we joined, I think, in 1992 to be the co-editors of the Book of Praise.
Wow. And there was another collection too of psalms, right, that you were involved with?
Yeah, so the Book of Psalms came out in 95, I think, and it's designed to have all of the Psalms, 150 Psalms, with responses for the lectionary, 105 lectionary Psalms,
Wow.
and pointing. Um, and one of the things we wanted to do was kind of encourage Canadian composers as well as international composers to supply the refrains, of which there's one that's original and one that borrows from a hymn, just to encourage what was already a practice in the Presbyterian Church of at least singing small things in kind of a chant style, but to have people learning to sing the Psalms again. So yeah, I was involved in that.
And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the whole project of psalm singing for congregations. I mean, the Reformed tradition certainly is noted for that emphasis. And so, how did that go, or how is it going?
Yeah, there I have some. I'm going to hop ahead to questions about regrets, but you know, we where I and other people have worked locally, people have learned to love singing the Psalms in that way, and there probably wasn't as much follow up in a systematic way as I'd have hoped to have people learn how to sing them. I know that they're read, and I think maybe I don't have any statistics, but the refrains I think are sung. One of my contributions was I really wanted to have some of the refrains and even, well, particular refrains appealing to kids. I mean,
Ah,
without pandering down to them, making them that they were interesting to sing and kids could learn to sing them as kind of their entry into singing psalms. So yes, the process started in probably 88, 89, I think, something like that. And we met as a committee and went through and divided them for congregational reading, what made the most sense. Because the earlier version of the Presbyterian hymn book had psalms for reading, but we felt that the divisions could be more logical in the sections that the readers read, rather than line and line about. The leader would read a kind of a salient portion, and then people would respond in a way that answered what the lead reader was reading.
rather than arbitrary back and
Exactly,
forth. Yeah.
exactly. Um,
Wow.
and then we had refrains and yeah. So
And that must have been quite an experience, though. Those books and just having that kind of a process going for a national
yeah,
project.
it was, yeah. And I was able to, excuse me, I was able to give workshops in various places, and having people see that, wow, we can do this. And in the several churches too, that I was involved with over a period of time, people did learn, and I think willingly and lovingly, to make them part of a weekly worship service.
Yeah. I remember John Ambrose was talking about his experience of having headed up the hymnal project for the United Church, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how much controversy they encountered along the way. And I was wondering, did you have any of that kind of experience?
Yes. Yeah. The I mean, there was controversy around changes at all. There was especially controversy around, quote, inclusive language, um, and controversy around female language for God, both of those being slightly connected but separate issues. And inclusive language, what we tried to do, not only to forestall criticism, but also to be kind of narrow about it, is to widen the language use around God, but not throw out. And I recognize I'm using the term. What's the word? Anyway, not throw out words like Lord, but keep them where they fit, and so on. So we try to be nuanced in our choice of inclusive language. In language for God, I mean, in language for the, oh, and that's for people as well. And then female language for God had more, more controversy, both from women and men. And when we had the testing of the book and the hopeful approval of the book in 1996, it was in Charlottetown, PEI. And I remember when we presented the texts to everybody, and a woman came up to me, and we had just sung "She Flies On." And I understand this. She was upset that we were using female language for the Holy Spirit. And she said, couldn't you have found a male dove? She Flies On, of course, she comes sailing on the wind, her wings flashing in the sun, and she's a dove that flies through, salvation history.
Uh-huh.
And she wanted, we couldn't have found a male dove to represent the Holy Spirit. So there was controversy.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now I know that you
But
had
they voted it in.
uh-huh.
And and people have, I mean, it's found, I mean, it had already found place, but she comes sailing on the wind, has continued to be a beloved hymn in people's repertoire.
I was reading in your biography that you had a sort of an aha moment at a workshop that you attended that exposed you to global music,
Yeah.
perhaps I don't know if it was for the very first time, but certainly for it was a powerful experience.
Yes,
Can
it
you,
was powerful.
can you say a little bit about that experience and then how it shaped your
Yes.
subsequent work?
Yeah. Yeah. In 1983, there was this watershed World Council of Churches, the Sixth Assembly, and it was in Vancouver. And people had many things to say about it. They remembered it as the singing assembly, and was brought to life by music from all around the world, with people whose names since became, worldwide known: Patrick Metcalfe and Pablo Sosa, Pascal Jordan, who's a bit less known but still has offered wonderful things, Ito Lo, and music just infused that assembly. I wasn't there, but a young minister named Drew Strickland was on the local welcoming committee for and he became our minister in Toronto at Beaches Presbyterian Church in 1984. And he brought this book of songs from the World Council and said, maybe we could do some of these. And I said, wow, yes, let's try them. And some of them were the Teze songs and Patrick Metcalfe songs from Zimbabwe. And so we started singing them in about 1985. And then in 1988, I'll just take another celebratory drink. Here's to my cold. In 1988, the World Council did this follow-up workshop, 10 days, near Toronto in Guelph, Ontario. And officially, we were exploring the music of the Caribbean, but also brought in music from elsewhere. And we were immersed in songs by people from all over the world. For me, I think besides Patrick Metcalfe's songs with the African rhythms, Pablo Sosa presented not only some of his songs, such as Miren qué bueno es, and also Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. And the background he gave to the unrest in Argentina and Chile, and how people were coping with it, and how the songs gave people strength and in the midst of struggle. And so it wasn't singing, when all is good, we'll sing and say praise and celebration. It's things are really awful around us, and these songs give us strength to continue whatever struggle we're involved in. And even though, well, in one sense, North America is quite a mercantile place when it comes to congregational song. There's an industry. I respect it and love it and have benefited from it, but sometimes you can get kind of a merchant's approach to it. Okay, and that's all not a bad thing in and of itself. But what Pablo showed me as he presented those was that there was this deeper meaning. And I mean, I knew of the value of singing congregationally before, but there was something, I guess, connected with the history and the social life that made me see, that it doesn't just have to be an interior situation within a worship service. It speaks to a social context.
Right.
And that changed everything for me.
Right. And in what way? How did that change your
Well, for one thing, it's very easy for a North American church, once again, and now this is going back 30 years or whatever, you can do the math, middle 80s, and before that, the tendency is to go with the familiar.
Mm.
And people love the familiar, and they're right to. But familiar means not only the familiar tunes, but also familiar forms and familiar languages. And what a song from another context brings us here is a sense of God, who God is. In liberation theology, to take one example, you have this sense of God marching with us and working with us. And so you have songs that were sung at funerals, like "We Are Marching in the Light of God." That was a kind of a hidden protest. People sang it. It was not offensive, but the people who sang it knew what it was, much in the way of Afro-American, African-American singing, where the meaning is hidden. And of course, that's a tradition that goes way, way back to the book of Revelation, if you will, and so on.
Sure.
So that with that understanding, I realized that it's not a closed circle, but also not only does it look outwards from the church, it brings the world into the church. And okay, to be a bit confrontational, it confronts us with, people really have a different experience of God and a different experience of justice from us. Now, the way you do that is not to be confrontational. It's to, bring people into the joy of learning different sounds, different rhythms. Hopefully they will see new things in their own hymnody, whatever that is, that different experience has brought to them. And so that's kind of how it influenced my work after that point, giving workshops and inviting people to the joy of clapping and moving. And there was this one moment in our local church, Beaches Presbyterian, and we were singing "Reamo leboha, Reamo leboha," and we were doing a step to it. And we did the step, and I won't do it here because it won't sound very good in the computer, but I was just stepping forward, stepping back. We got to the end of the song, and these sometimes dour Presbyterians kept on stepping. The singing was done, but that rhythm of our stepping kept going. And this was spontaneous, and it taught us about the importance of the non-spoken, the importance of rhythm in singing together.
Interesting. Well, so you became very, very attuned to international things, but then you went on to sort of become part of that, right? You went to the World Council of Churches and became a leader in all of this.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that experience?
Sure. One thing led to another. After the 1988 experience, we started recording at Beaches Presbyterian Church, and we had a group of singers and players that both sang in congregational song and also played sort of alternately. They would all kinds of instruments. And so I started doing workshops and including ones with the Hymn Society. And it was in hold on, I've got it written here. Hold on. It was the year of Grand Rapids, which would have been 1998. And let me just collect my scattered thoughts here. Oh, yeah. And so we presented the Book of Praise, the 1997 Book of Praise. And that's where I met more than two, but let's say two kindred spirits. One being Jorge Lockwood and one being Michael Hahn, who I hadn't known at all before. And so just flash forward a few years, and the singers and players of Beaches Church were invited by Jorge to come down to New York and kind of show the way of singing internationally and how it linked us with people that came in from outside, but also could be helpful in his two congregations, the Anglo and the Hispanic, sing one another's song. And so we gave some workshops that particular weekend. This is after 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And flashing forward again, Michael Hahn was invited to Toronto to give a workshop on the Lord's Prayer in global song. And Wendy said to him, we knew him a bit by then, why don't you come and worship at our church? And would you stay at our house? And he said, oh, no one's has invited me. So yeah, he came, and that kind of cemented our relationship further. And he came to our morning worship on Sunday. And afterwards he said to Wendy, oh, bracket. I mean, we had started incorporating sung prayers, sung responses to the Great Prayer of Thanksgiving, anything that we could sing, we would mix in. So it wasn't just 4 hymns and a sermon, it was singing all the way through. So after the service, Wendy and he were walking back home to our place. It was walkable, still is. And Michael said, I think that's what God had in mind, which was just enormous encouragement and approbation of what we were doing locally. Okay, so now that's all groundwork to say that after the World Council 9th Assembly in Puerto Alegre, a certain amount of time after that, Sime Montero had finished her term with the World Council, and there was about an 18-month gap. And then it was decided that, yes, the United Methodist Church USA would fill that position again, and both Michael and Jorge said that I should apply. And so I did. And it was in preparation for the 10th Assembly in Busan. And so it came down to 2 of us. One was a Korean person, I believe, and then they chose me. And that's kind of how that happened. So I was there for 5 years and led local worship and also international gatherings for those 5 years.
Wow. I mean, you've really lived, you've swum in the pool, so to speak, of international praise and worship.
Yeah. And, oh yes, many, many wonderful experiences. Okay, well, I'll try and do them a bit in order. The one high point was not that Philip Potter's death was a high point, but he died during my term. And it was actually, oh no, I'm gonna switch my story. It was Nelson Mandela. We did several memorial services, and Nelson Mandela died in late 2013, and our general secretary was down with the family because the WCC connections with the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa was very, very strong. And he, Olaf Fix-Tveit, said to the family, "We're going to have a memorial service when I get back to Geneva." And this is right after the Busan Assembly, and everybody went on holidays. And leaving me and a few other people there at the ecumenical chapel, and with the job of putting on a memorial service for Nelson Mandela. And so a really high point of doing that was discovering Nelson Mandela's humor, which I was able to work into the liturgy. And we had a person reading some of the things that he'd said as a dignitary was coming up to deliver their eulogy. And then a higher point even was singing with the diaspora of South African people in Geneva, South African freedom songs. And it just brought it all home in a way that, well, happened over and over again, but just this connection to the movement and what it can provide and produce of singing together, and how important it was for carrying people forward.
It's interesting to me that it's around the same time that the Hymn Society sort of really plunged into the same kind of dynamics. I was thinking about the 1999
Exactly.
conference in
Yeah.
Vancouver. And the
Yeah.
same names that you mentioned from the 80s were prominently featured at that conference, right?
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
And yeah, and well, I weaseled myself into the band and played guitar along with, what was being done, and so that was really fun. And Michael Hahn invited Wendy and me to join the leadership kind of at the end of the conference, and just introduced us, and that was just wonderful to have been part of that. Michael knew of our work by that point, and it was yeah, just, well, mind-blowing and exciting.
I've noticed that weaseling in is part of the theme of your life trajectory.
Yes.
You did it to the high school band, and now you did it to the band at Vancouver, right?
Yes, it is. It is. It's kind of, it's in some ways I'm shy and hesitate to put myself forward. Although with guitar, I'm a little less so, because I think, okay, they need a guitar player, or I can join in with other guitar players and add something.
It creates a way in, right? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, right. And Wendy is affirming what I'm asking. She just said, "So true that you are a weaseler inner."
Yeah. I do that,
Which
and
reminds me,
hopefully with good results, mostly.
yeah. Which reminds me, if anybody else wants to chime in with a comment or a question, please do so. I forgot to mention that at the beginning of our time together. So I would like to kind of switch over to talking a little bit about the Hymn Society. I know that you served on the EC, the Executive Committee,
Yeah.
and as president also.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about your experience in leadership?
Yeah. The For me, the first thing about the Hymn Society is its collegial spirit, and I guess it was my second Hymn Society gathering, where I was sitting at a table with Richard Leach and Dan Damon and a few other people, and I didn't know them. I mean, I might have recognized Dan Damon's name, I'm not sure, but Richard Leach and I got talking about. And he saw that I played guitar, and he knew about Bruce Cockburn, Canadian guitar player, singer, songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got talking about Bruce Cockburn, and then that developed, as happened many times over and over with the Hymn Society, that developed into a long-standing friendship and collaboration. And so that's one constant of my experience with the Hymn Society. Um, the oh, well, I guess I'd led some workshops maybe by that point, and yes, I'd weaseled my way, and I know, to following up. So this must have been 2000, following up from the 1999 conference in Vancouver. I suggested to, I guess, Carl Daw that I could lead a follow-up workshop in global song.
Hmm.
And so I did that. And all of the folks who were interested in global song were there, and we had a great, a wonderful time. And I received some criticisms, which I found very helpful from various people about pronunciation. One guy from South Africa said it's not Remo Leboga, but Leboga. And, just things, reactions. All right. So flash forward a bit. I get a phone call from the aforementioned Carl Daw. And I at first thought, I think, oh, he wants me to be a member at large. And I thought, that's kind of a big job. I'm not sure what I think about it. And no, it was to be what I consider being president. And so I think I said I better think about it, and which I did, and Wendy and I talked about it. And my question was, well, okay, I'll tell a story on Wendy. She said, well, maybe they mean Don Anderson. She did not mean that unkindly,
Uh-huh.
but Don's name is James Donald Anderson and Andrew James Donaldson. And we used to make people laugh by presenting ourselves to people with whom we were doing hymn workshops. So anyway, and it was a fair question, because Don would seem to be the person, other than, a guitar picking guy like me, that seemed to maybe have set the pattern of who you invite. I'm not a scholar, I'm not a professor, and so on. Anyway, to cut to the chase, I accepted. And that, again, showed the collegiality of working with the Hymn Society, because people were so supportive in areas that I was uncertain, and helpful, and telling me how they coped with different things. And so, of course, it's a lot of work, but it's also, you develop deep relationships that continue to today. And, I just learned so much from everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's the story of all of us who are involved in the Hymn Society. It's all continuous learning and supporting one another.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah.
By the way, Carl is watching right now, so he has an opportunity to chime in and offer a differing opinion. But I'm not
Thank
seeing
you,
one
Carl,
at
for
this
the
point. So,
invitation.
yeah. Uh, and Michael Hahn is actually asking, what experience and wisdom can you bring from the Inclusive World Council of Churches that would benefit the Hymn Society, especially in the current political climate in the United States?
Yes. Um, First of all, let me gather my thoughts here. The um, uh, where do I start? I mean, okay, I'll put it this way, and maybe I can back my way into a better answer. The the challenges facing us now, in a way, we're well prepared for, because I remember in addressing the word inclusive, one year, and I can't remember the location, but I invited a rabbi to come, and it was one of the ones on the Psalms, one of the conferences on the Psalms, and I really wanted that Jewish presence there, and through a friend who lives in Minneapolis, he led me to a Minneapolis rabbi who was generous enough to come and led us through the Psalms in different ways of singing in the synagogue. Now, inclusivity, I think, will help us. One of the challenges now is that we're confronted with these huge global forces. And to quote myself a little bit, one of the questions that we're facing is, how can we sing? And I wrote a song about that. How can we sing our I got it here, where our souls aghast and shaken, sing when our hope lies broken like a bone. Long whispered schemes now rise up proud and open, tyrants and kings now rule us from a throne. And so how can we rediscover the power of singing in a constantly changing environment, both politically, and that we're not able to come to the hymn society. We don't see crossing the border and the kinds. And our dear friends are in the hymn society, and we know that this is not something they stand for. But also we know that they're in Canada, so I'm not finger. Challenges of pulling away from the Canadian experiment and so on. So we do need to find ways of being inclusive, and we do need to keep rediscovering why we sing and the strength of singing together. John, I think we have learned in the past about welcoming one another and listening to one another's song, learning one another's language. And I think that's one of the things that people hesitate to use the word global song, but the songs from around the worshiping church around the world, that it's in the practice of learning someone else's sounds, rhythms, tones, and words that we as a hymn society have worked at listening with a sharper ear to another person's point of view. And I think that's really going to help us in the next, well, it's a constantly changing situation, but in the next several years of drawing on that, listening to one another and learning one another's song, that will be at least part of what we need to be doing.
Very good. Thank you for that answer. It occurs to me that we know you, and we're talking to you right now, but you come as a family package to the Hymn Society. You and Wendy and Hillary.
I do.
And
Hillary, yes.
You and Hillary are probably, I guess, the only two presidents to have been related to each other directly. And what's that like to be sort of the first family of the Hymn Society?
Well, the parent becomes the child in a way, and the child becomes the teacher. And we've not in one sense, but amazed in the sense that at the kind of growth Hillary has shown, through this experience, and how hard she's worked and the connection she's made, and also how she's pushed the Hymn Society, I think, to continue being a cross-border organization. And and so, yeah, it's been amazing. And Wendy is this connector person, and not only for me, but for many other people, she sees connections and opportunities that people might not see, and connects people up and has them working together when they might not have thought of working together before. So yeah,
that's true. I mean,
Wendy kind of a package deal.
Always there, right? And in fact, she just was commenting that it was Michael Hahn who got Hillary to the Hymn Society in the first place. I don't.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And nor should she have. She wasn't all that interested in coming with her parents to the Hymn Society,
Right.
Which was all fine. But then Michael said, you should you should join the Hymn Society, and she said, okay.
Oh.
But I'm gratified that sometimes for a parent, the child's experience is not always good, and we're so glad that she has found this experience to be for herself, rewarding, and she has made her own connections and her own collaborators, and for many of them, she arrives and we don't see her much. She's doing her own thing, and then through much learning, we've been able to support her without too much telling her what to do, although that sometimes happens. But standing back and let her do what she does, and yeah.
Well, I think we all are so grateful to you and to your family, to Wendy and Hillary, for the enormous impact that you've made on this society. And I don't know if you know this, but Hillary is going to be one of our interviewees for the next series that starts in September. So
Oh,
we'll get to hear
wonderful.
another
I wasn't aware
perspective,
of this.
another perspective from the
Yeah.
Donaldsons, right? Well, this
We'll
time's
see
gone.
what kind of correctives she brings.
This time has gone so fast.
It has.
I'm sorry that we have to stop, but I do want to ask one final question, as I do with everybody,
Okay.
and that is, what would be your fondest hope for the Hymn Society moving forward?
I think probably the Hymn Society is really good in last 15 or more years. Before that, but I've noticed it particularly with a number of people, but John Thornburg and his visionary questions. Um, one of them I think is how what do we do to become the people that God wants us to be? And the my fondest hope is that the Hymn Society will continue to support and welcome young people's work. And I'll put this negatively, as it has not done in the past. It hasn't turned young people into, the hewers of wood and carriers of water in the society, handing out bulletins and, but given them a job to do, a meaningful job in the not only the mechanics of conferences, but in the decisional process. And that has been its singular strength, I believe. And I really, my fond hope is that through the difficult times we're now facing, that we can continue to support, teach, and learn from the young people that can offer so much to us.
Well, that is so true, and we certainly need one another
We do.
in this
We do.
difficult time. So, well, Andrew, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Well, thank
Really,
you in
really
in
enjoyed it,
turn.
and
Has been a pleasure.
and as I've said, I think I said to you earlier, before this event, that I learned something interesting about every single person that we talked to in this series, and that certainly has been true today as well. So thanks so much for that, and thanks to everybody for being
Well,
part of this today. And we'll look forward to seeing you next year for this series. This is the last one for this year, and it's been a great time.
It's my hope as well.
So thanks so
Thank
much,
you again,
Andrew.
Mike. Thank you, Stephen.
Yes, thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Wendy.
Through the night, full of